that title once again, so you guys can see here. It is now the decision: trade me or fire the head coach. And this, of course, like I said, coming from Shams of The Athletic. Kevin Durant tells owner to trade him or fire Steve Nash and Sean Marks, sources say. So in the face of a meeting with Brooklyn Nets owner Joe Tsai over the weekend, NBA All-Star Kevin Durant reiterated his trade request and informed Tsai that he needs to choose between Durant or the pairing of the general manager and coach Steve Nash, sources tell The Athletic. Durant stated that he does not have faith in the team's direction, sources say. Durant and Tsai both spoke in London on Saturday, and a source described the discussion as transparent and professional. The meeting took place a year to the day that Durant agreed to his 4-year deal, with the Nets owner barely a month over his initial trade request on June 30th. He's now entering the first season of that extension, so he's obviously has a lot of time left on this contract. It isn't something that he's going to go towards the tail end and he has 1 year left and the owner has to decide, okay, do we keep Durant or do we trade or do we get rid of him? The Nets have direct knowledge of the reasons behind Durant's request, sources said, and has understand that the 12-time All-Star will continue to be resolute in his stance. Durant is believed to warrant a change of scenery headed into his 16th season. Across the league, people have wondered whether Durant could miss training camp. Should no trade develop? Sean, how are you doing, man? Hopefully you're doing well. Obviously we go into the Boston Celtics, we go into the trades. The Celtics, the Raptors, the Miami Heat remain the most significant candidates to acquire Durant, sources say, with the Boston package centering around All-Star Jaylen Brown seemingly as a viable deal. Tsai and the Nets have made it clear privately that they will take every asset from a team and trades for Durant, sources say. So, here's what I'll say about this, and let me take a sip of the pre-workout. I think that this is a ridiculous and honestly sad thing that's happening for Kevin Durant entering his 16th season. Any superstar player, whether it is LeBron James, whether it is Michael Jordan, whether it is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they would never act this way. And the funny part about this, and it's all going back to when they initially signed their contracts for the Brooklyn Nets. Because if you guys remember originally, Kevin Durant was supposed to be a Knick. He was supposed to go to the New York Knicks and play for that team. And instead of, trying to play for that team and trying to be part of that organization, Kyrie Irving said, no, we're going to go to Brooklyn, and I feel like that's where we should go. And the fact that that is what's happening right now, I am a little bit confused because both of them had stated on Instagram publicly that it doesn't matter who the head coach is. Those two guys can take over the NBA without them, right? I mean, let's remember those are the same guys that said they didn't need an NBA head coach. They don't care who the head coach is. We are the coaches of the team. So to me, like I said, throughout this whole thing until now, all of this has to be put on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I don't care anymore about blaming the coach, blaming the GM, when these guys have stated publicly that this is their team. One, it's their team, and two, they're the ones that really care about it most than anybody else. And so when I see a story like this come out, especially from Shams of The Athletic and talking about how in a meeting there, there's going to be, it's like you have to decide between me or the head coach and all that stuff like that. It is frustrating because, like I said, you expect a guy like Kevin Durant to play no matter what and play that contract. I mean, this is the first time in a while where we've seen star players, and I feel like this is really stemming from the James Harden situation and including Ben Simmons and maybe even Kyrie Irving to some extent, but maybe a little bit later. But this is really stemming from those two deals where they didn't want to play for the organization and got their way. And again, I'm not here to be like, oh, it's always the players, oh, it's always the owners. I'm not here to pit a war against the owner and the employees or the basketball players. Like that. That's not what I'm here to do. What I'm here to do is just try to figure out trying to make sense of what Kevin Durant and basically the owner, like, where are their heads at this moment, right? Because I mean, both these guys want to win a championship. It's not like they both are on this team to just have a good time and go to the playoffs and relax. No, they want to win NBA championships, right? I mean, this is Kevin Durant, whether he wants to say it or not, he wants to continue to build his legacy. And I don't care what anybody says. I think anybody would be foolish because you want to leave a mark in this league. And I just find it funny that Kevin Durant is asking for a trade request when I think his team is a little bit better than it was a year ago. Like, and you know, maybe the James Harden and again Ben Simmons. If Ben Simmons can play like Ben Simmons, who knows, right? I thought that by adding Royce O'Neal and you know, kind of going with the same team again, it might not be a bad shout. But I mean, Kevin Durant has basically said you have to pick me or Steve Nash. And again, I don't feel bad for Steve Nash or Sean Marks. You know, I think Steve Nash, I've talked about it numerous times before. I thought that he should have been with an organization or a team that helps him grow into that role. Like, I think if he would have stayed with the Warriors as a coach instead of a consultant that whole time when he was training Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, then I think it would have been a lot smoother in terms of him finding another job somewhere else and having someone else take the Brooklyn Nets job. Because to be honest with you, I don't know who is out there right now. Maybe Mark Jackson, maybe the Van Gundy brothers. Like D'Antoni maybe. I think the year they had D'Antoni, you could clearly see that that was probably their better season, which I think it kind of says a little bit something about who D'Antoni is as a coach. He may not last very long, but he's a really damn good coach. And so to me, I cannot get behind what Kevin Durant is doing here in Brooklyn. I can't get behind what Kyrie Irving is doing here in Brooklyn. I don't know how anybody can defend these two guys and say that this is the way that the NBA should be done. I'm not saying that they should be loyal with the team. I mean, again, it goes back to the whole, and I don't want to keep bringing this up, but it goes back to the whole LeBron thing, right? Where he went to Cleveland, or he was in Cleveland, excuse me, got drafted there, and then by the time he was done with his contract, he went to Miami in the right way. I mean, this is the difference between a guy like LeBron James and Kevin Durant. LeBron James will finish stuff out and then decide, okay, you know what? I'm not really feeling it right now. I'm gonna step away this season and go to another team. Again, he didn't do that for the decision, and you can criticize that all you want, of like, oh, you should be courteous and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. He still made the decision once his contract was done. He's not doing what these new superstars are doing right now, which is quitting on their teams, quitting on the reasons, and quitting on basically making a mess of the situation that this is their mess. Ben Simmons, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, this is their mess. This isn't something that was created by the organization. This isn't something that was created by someone else. It was them and them alone. And the fact that this is what we're seeing right now from Kevin Durant is a little bit of a gut punch to the NBA. Because I don't think that this is the right way to do it. And I will continue to be a broken record on this point. Because it continues to be, to me, a problem where guys are just not finishing out their contracts. And again, if you don't like the situation, when you are, sports is completely different. I don't care if anyone wants to compare apples and oranges to a real job or other things like that. But when it comes to this point specifically, you are signed there for 4 years. You signed the extension. If you knew that this was going to be the case back then to where it is right now, you would not have signed the extension, right? You would have said, I don't really care about the money at this point. I want to build my legacy. I'm saying sayonara to the Brooklyn Nets. But instead of doing that, he decided to sign the extension because obviously it's a lot of money. I will never hate on anybody for getting their money. And I will continue to make that point. Make your money, make your bread. But then you can't make your bread and then decide, oh, I don't want to be here. Because that to me is just that's being not a great teammate, and that's just quitting on your team. That's not something that I think NBA players from the past and the future should be looking at and being congratulatory of Kevin Durant. And again, I think that they will trade him eventually. It makes it look like it just from the fact that they just don't want to deal with the headache. But now it becomes the question for the Brooklyn Nets as to what do they get in return, right? Because now teams are going to know that the Brooklyn Nets are desperate to get rid of Kevin Durant, meaning that their trade packages and the deals that they are going to make to the Brooklyn Nets are not going to be as good as they once were when everything was just speculatory. Which is kind of crazy that the Brooklyn Nets, I think, would reject that Jaylen Brown trade. Because if you're thinking about it, I don't think the Brooklyn Nets offer you that trade again. Unless there's a team that is just going to go insane with trading away players or trading away stuff for you. I think the only team that possibly makes sense for them And in my opinion, the only one that I could potentially see, not the Boston Celtics, to be honest with you. I think it's going to have to be the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat make the most sense. The Heat culture, Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, a coach that demands and commands presence. Someone that's going to hold these guys accountable. And that's been my problem with Steve Nash to some extent as well, is that he doesn't hold these guys accountable. For how great of a point guard that Steve Nash was, he never held Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant responsible or held them accountable for the actions on the court as well. I mean, again, if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm probably looking for a trade too. From his perspective, right? You think about this. You have Kyrie Irving on your team who may or may not play the whole season. He hasn't played, I believe we looked at it, he hasn't played 60 games in over since 2016. 2017, I think, might be the last time that he did it. Before he went to Boston and then Brooklyn. He only played 60 games, and that was in Cleveland. So I think from Kevin Durant's perspective, he doesn't want to play with a guy that's not going to be there available for him. He clearly wasn't when they needed him the most, and that's why they had to go into the play-in game, and then they had to play against the Boston Celtics at the 8th seed, get swept, even though they were kind of the favorites in that series. They got swept. And I think when you see Kevin Durant look at that situation, I don't think he wants to be in that probable situation again. And that to me is kind of the frustrating part when it comes to Kevin Durant as a basketball player. As a person, I think he's a great guy. Whether you like him or not, I still think he does a lot of great things. It's just on the basketball court, it's just a little bit confusing in the NBA business side of things. Because his decisions and things that happen, to me, are head scratchers at best. And it is frustrating to kind of notice when you look at the situation at hand when it comes to these players. How can you trust that your second best player is going to be there for you? Hell, how can you even trust that your third best player is going to be there for you? Think about Ben Simmons in this situation. Ben Simmons has yet to play a game for the Brooklyn Nets when he got traded. And he was supposed to be back in that same month. He was supposed to be back for the playoffs. He ended up having a different back injury that I think was caused by stress. I don't think it was caused by him kind of going at the motions and playing and trying to go for game 4 against the Boston Celtics. I think that this was really because of the stress of playing for the Brooklyn Nets. And I think the pressure is going to mount even more now on Ben Simmons than it would be if he would have played in that series. Because if you think about it from this perspective, you play, you get your butts kicked, people forget about it, right? Because this, to me, this series, or the series against the Boston Celtics, was more so on Kevin Durant than it was on anybody else because of how badly he played in the first 2 games. And so when I look at it from that perspective, when I look at it from here, how can I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. Like, how can you be on Kevin Durant's side at this current moment when he gave up? And Tar Heel Nation, you said, as a KD fan, I'm ashamed of him, bro. He's so soft. He is soft. And it's frustrating to see because he is such a damn good basketball player. He is such a good basketball player that it's frustrating for me to see him act the way that he does, do the things that he does. But again, he is human after all, right? Just like you and me, just like anybody out here that's tweeting on the Twitter sphere, we're all human. We all have our mistakes. We all have our vices. We all have, stuff that makes us human. But when it comes to Kevin Durant, not saying that he's a guy that is a child. He might be acting childish in this sense. Finish out the contract, play the games, because at the end of the day, it was you, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, who built this roster, who picked the players, and you probably signed off on him. I highly doubt that Sean Marks would do anything without Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving's permission. I highly doubt that. Because I think those two guys want to be in control of everything. Want to be in control of the narrative. Want to be in control of their destiny. And I get that. I understand that. I'm probably going to be the same. I'm probably the same way if I was in that situation. I'm trying to control everything. But then you can't go out and say, you guys just didn't do enough for me. I'm getting traded. Or, you know what? It's just not working out. We're getting traded. When it was you guys, and again, this is to me what it looks like. It's when you have a mess on the floor, you spill your Coke on the floor. Let's say at Costco. Well, we'll go with Costco just because I'm about to go there later today. You go to Costco, you get your hot dog, you get your soda, and you spill the soda on the floor. And instead of going to help wipe it up, you just leave it, and you leave the store, and you go home with your hot dog. That to me cannot be what we see in the NBA, because I think that's really what is hurting the NBA at times, and really from the fans' perspective. And again, you can like the fans, you can hate the fans, but they're the ones that pay the bills, unfortunately, right? And sometimes they can be douchebags, sometimes they can be a-holes, but they're the ones that pay the money. TV deals, jerseys, merchandise, whatever it is. And again, I'm not saying that we should, always, fans are always right, bow down to the fans. But how can fans get behind this product if we continue to let players do what a Ben Simmons does and what a James Harden does? And now Kevin Durant's entering that conversation as one of those type of players. Creating the mess, not picking it up, and deciding to leave and go to a different team. And the reason why I call out Kevin Durant like this is not because I'm trying to get clout. It's not because I'm trying to become the best NBA news and rumors podcaster of all time, right? Everybody has a podcast. Everybody has everything. But the reason why I call it out is because I think as an NBA community, this is just not a good look. Because, like I said, it makes us look like when the going gets tough for your NBA superstars, they fold and they go away. And that's just something you can't have as an NBA player. Or as an NBA, as your Adam Silver and the owners and the coaching staff. You can't have your best player quit on you. It's frustrating. And it's not, and it doesn't just stem from, Kevin Durant from this year. We could even go back to when Kobe Bryant did it against the Phoenix Suns all those years ago, when he just quit on his team. He didn't take a shot for the second half of that playoff series, and they lost. It's the same type of energy here when it comes to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving building that team, creating the culture and the environment, and then at the end of the day, not being able to do something with it. Not being able to take that roster that really should be pretty decent. I'm not saying it's the best roster in the world. I'm not saying it is a NBA Finals contender or NBA Finals winner roster. But you should be able to take this to at least the second or third round. And the fact that they couldn't do that, and it all stems from the injury history, it all stems from what's going on in the NBA currently. I can't get behind I can't get behind the Brooklyn Nets and the way that this whole thing has been going. I blame the owner. I blame the coaches. I blame Kevin Durant. Everybody deserves blame in this. No one is blameless in this line fire of Kevin Durant wanting a trade request, Desai not really doing his job as an NBA owner, demanding excellence from his guys, and the coach and the GM. Right? Because I think that if Steve Nash had the chutzpah about him, if he really had if he really had that coaching energy, that coaching prowess, then he would have gotten this roster over the finish line. And that doesn't mean, like I said, go to the NBA Finals. It means at least get to the next round, at least become dangerous in the playoffs. And they were nothing like that. And I think without D'Antoni, part of that coaching staff, you could clearly see that his offensive genius was missing from that playoff series. I mean, you could clearly see that this was a different team at this point. And so, as we kind of continue to proceed with the story that's keeps breaking every time that we're on here, it is frustrating to know that Kevin Durant did this. Because I think he's so much better than what he's shown. I think he's so much better than what people give him credit for. But I think that this would leave a mark on his legacy. And I'm sorry to say that. I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, the legacy matters and things like that. But in terms of how people will remember you, yes, we'll remember the Oklahoma City days. We will remember the Golden State Warriors days. But will we remember when Kevin Durant decided, you know what? I'm going to quit on my team because I built this roster. It didn't work out. I'm leaving the mess for someone else to clean up. And that's not fair. I don't think that's fair, Kevin Durant, to do that. Again, you could say the 4 years and then decide, okay, you know what? It's not really working out. I'm leaving. And I think everybody would be okay with that. But it's the fact that you're leaving when it's only a 1 year into your extension. You're thinking, I don't really think that this is going to work out. And basically, you're going to leave the Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie Irving only. And even then, I think Kyrie Irving's gone. I think he's going to the Lakers. I really do. Because I think that Lakers fans are going to be happy. They're going to be ecstatic about that when it happens. But like I said, it is frustrating to see the situation that's going on. And the ultimatum is here for Tsai. Now the question is on Tsai because he's the owner. He needs to decide what is going to be the right situation. If you are an NBA, if you're the NBA owner, if you're Joe Tsai, what do you do? And maybe I'll leave that as a poll in the chat. So let me do that really quick before we continue on this. Before we continue here, let me just leave this as a poll. If you're Tsai, do you keep or you keep Durant or fire the coaches? I'm going to ask you guys in the community. I mean, again, I want to ask you guys because you guys, this is a community, like I said. I don't want this to be something where it's because this is all for you guys, right? I mean, even though I could vote as well, I think if I had to pick, and I'm gonna go with being an NBA owner here for a second, I probably would fire the coaches. And the reason why I would fire the coaches, and I casted my vote, the reason why I would fire the coaches is because you cannot get rid of a generational talent in Kevin Durant. And again, this is nothing personal with Steve Nash. This is nothing personal with Sean Marks. But you could clearly see that these two guys need a lot more nurturing, especially Steve Nash as a coach. I like Steve Nash. I think he's one of the greatest point guards of all time. His change of pace and change of speed and everything that makes that makes Steve Nash the point guard that he was back in the day is good. And the reason why I say that is because Steve Nash clearly was a consultant first, didn't really work on becoming a coach until later in his career. You know, he was, on the Champions League coverage, covering his Tottenham Hotspurs because he's a Hotspur fan for English football for everyone that, or I guess I'd say European football. And doing that first, and then became a consultant, was a consultant while doing that, and then decided to become a coach. And I think that you could clearly see that Steve Nash is not ready to be a head coach in this league yet. I think that there is a lot more nourishing and development that he needs to do as a coach himself in order to get him going, in order for him to become that guy. That could, like I said, I thought that he should have been with a younger team, maybe this Orlando Magic team, and start working and developing under them and really kind of growing up with them. So that way, when he does do great things on offense, what he remembers back in his D'Antoni days or anything like that, then you could clearly see like, okay, this guy could do something. But like I said, it is frustrating to see this sort of situation. And you're right, Russ. He does need to be a assistant first. And I think anybody with the brain could have told you that years ago. Because it is clearly night and day obvious from when they had D'Antoni as an offensive consultant just a year ago, where they were at compared to where they're at now. And like I said, you could talk about trying to think of the right word. You could talk about not having Kyrie Irving, the vaccine mandates, all that stuff. Throw that out the window. This team is much better than being an 8 seed without Kyrie Irving. This team should at least be a 6th to 5th seed without Kyrie Irving. And the fact that they had to go to the play-in game, the fact that it was The fact that they had to go to the playing game, had to be the 8 seed against the Boston Celtics. I mean, that's embarrassing. That is super embarrassing as a team with so much star potential, so much star power. It's ridiculous that it had to come to that for this last season. And Russ, you said, and again, I'm looking on my phone as well. You said here, nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You are absolutely right, Russ. There's nothing wrong with being an assistant and kind of growing and developing that way because how could you? How could you? All the great coaches were at one time on a bench learning under someone else's tutelage. And I just think that if Steve Nash would have stayed a little bit longer with Steve Kerr, you could have seen probably what happened to some of these other guys. I mean, Kenny Atkinson, the exception to the rule. He decided he wanted to stay. He didn't like the situation that was going on in Charlotte and decided to dip out. But Mike Brown was an assistant. Well, was a head coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron James was in his prime. Then became an assistant on the bench for the Golden State Warriors. I'm sure there's other places that he's been as well. So I don't want to knock his coaching career, but you could clearly see that when he did kind of do that. Walton is back to being an assistant. I don't think Walton's head coach material, to be honest with you, Russ. That could be a different conversation for a different day, but I don't see coach material from Walton. He just doesn't have that. I just don't think, I don't know. Anytime I saw a Kings game when he was a head coach, I just did not like. But to go back to the Steve Nash, I think it would have been a lot better. You could have seen a lot more growth and development. And this is kind of where we're at right now when it comes to Kevin Durant currently. And let's make sure we look at Sham's Twitter, make sure there's nothing else to talk about here. Nothing else. It just says the sources informed decide that he does not have faith in the Nets' direction. Like I talked about, the meeting was described as transparent and professional with a message: keep me or the GM and coach. And I left a poll out there for you guys. I want you guys to continue voting. I'll probably keep it up for the rest of the stream. If you guys would let me know, what would you do if you were to decide? Would you keep Durant or would you fire the coaches? I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And again, this story is going to continue to rear its ugly head until Kevin Durant is traded or decides I don't want to trade. I don't want to trade and I want to continue to be here or to be there in Brooklyn. So again, like I said, let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of the situation that we have here at hand when it pertains to Kevin Durant making the ultimatum of keeping me or firing Steve Nash and Sean Marks? Let me know in the comment section down below. Remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button.